It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving when my 14-year-old son sent me a text that stopped me cold. "Dad, they said there's no room for me inside." I was standing on a scaffolding platform over the I-240 expansion corridor in Memphis, wind cutting through my jacket, clipboard tucked under one arm when I read those words. I had to read them twice, then a third time. My son was in Clarksville, 90 miles north, at my mother's house, where he was supposed to be spending the holiday while I finished a site inspection. He'd driven up with my brother that morning. They'd offered to take him. I thought it was a good sign, the first good sign from that side of the family in a long time. I called him immediately. He picked up on the first ring. "What's going on?" I said. "I'm outside." His voice was very flat. Not tearful, just flat, the way a kid sounds when they've already decided not to cry. Aunt said the house is too full. She said she was sorry, but there wasn't room for me. I asked him where exactly outside meant. He said on the front porch steps. I asked if he had his coat. He said yes. Then he said very quietly, "I brought the pie, the one I baked yesterday. I still have it." I told him I was coming. I didn't say anything else. I climbed down from the scaffold, told my project lead I had a family situation, and I drove 2 hours and 40 minutes through intermittent rain on 24 North, the heater running too loud, the radio off. The whole drive I kept coming back to one thing. He still had the pie. Jace had spent all of Tuesday in our apartment kitchen in Memphis, following a recipe he'd found online for a sweet potato pie. It was his first time making one without me hovering over him. He'd been proud of it in that quiet way he had, didn't make a big deal of it, just covered it carefully and put it in a carrier, and said he wanted to bring it because he didn't want to show up empty-handed. He was 14. He'd thought about that. He'd wanted to contribute something. When I pulled into my mother's driveway, I saw him before he saw me. He was sitting on the second porch step with the pie carrier in his lap, both arms wrapped around it. His hood was up. The front windows of the house glowed warm orange, and through the glass I could see shapes moving, hear the muffled sound of a football game. There were 6 cars in the driveway. 2 I didn't recognize. I got out of the truck. He looked up. He didn't run to me or say anything right away. He just exhaled, this long, slow breath like he'd been holding it. "Hey, bud," I said. "Hey." I sat down on the step next to him. The concrete was cold through my jeans. He shifted the pie carrier slightly in his lap, still holding it carefully, still protecting it out of some instinct I recognized. "How long have you been out here?" He shrugged. "Maybe 2 hours. 2 hours. On a November evening in Tennessee while a football game played 10 feet away inside a house I own. Did anyone come check on you?" He looked at the driveway. "Uncle came out once. He said Aunt was stressed and there were too many people. He said maybe they could figure something out." He paused, then he went back in. I didn't press him right then. I just sat with him for a moment, listening to the distant sounds from inside. "Was Grandma there?" He nodded. "Did she say anything to you?" "She waved at me through the window." He said it without any particular expression. Then, after a beat, I didn't want to make anyone mad, so I just stayed out here. Something settled in my chest. Not rage, not yet. More like the feeling of a long overdue door swinging slowly and finally shut. I stood up, told him to bring the pie, and we went back to the truck. To understand what happened next, you have to understand how we got there, not to that driveway, but to the kind of family that could leave a kid outside in the cold for 2 hours and call it a misunderstanding. My father died 6 years ago. Heart attack while he was mowing the backfield behind their property. Quick, which I suppose was the one mercy in it. He and my mother had rented the same house in Clarksville for nearly 20 years. After he died, the landlord gave her 60 days to vacate. I was 28. I'd just cleared my student loans from my engineering degree. I didn't have much in savings, but I had a steady income and decent credit, and a father who'd just died, and I couldn't watch my mother lose her home in the same season she lost her husband. So I bought her a house, 3-bedroom ranch on Dunbar Road in Clarksville. The mortgage had to be in my name. I was the one who qualified. I put in the down payment, covered the monthly payment, the utilities, her health insurance when a coverage gap hit the following year. My brother helped her move the furniture. He told me later that was his contribution. 2 years after that, my wife died on a wet highway exit ramp during an evening commute, and I became a single father to a 12-year-old in a city 90 miles from the rest of my family. I didn't ask my brother for help. I didn't ask my mother either. Part of that was stubbornness. Part of it was that I'd spent 30 years learning not to need things from people who'd always found it easier to admire me from a distance than to actually show up. Growing up, my brother was the one my mother talked about at church, the funny one, the social one, the one who could fill a room without trying. I was the serious one, the quiet one, the one who read ahead in the textbook and got called out for making the teacher uncomfortable. When I left for college on a full scholarship, my mother was proud of me in an abstract way. When my brother dropped out of his first semester and came home to start a pressure washing business, she was relieved to have him nearby. That pattern, him being valued for his presence, me being appreciated for what I provided, repeated itself for the next decade in ways I chose not to examine too closely. You stop seeing the shape of something when you live inside it long enough. I started noticing things about a year before that Thanksgiving. A trailer parked in the driveway of Dunbar Road when I visited in the spring. Commercial landscaping equipment in the garage when I drove up in June to fix a water heater. Aerators, commercial spreaders, a riding mower that definitely wasn't my mother's. My brother had launched a landscaping business. I congratulated him. I noticed his business was registered to Dunbar Road's address. I noticed my mother's car had been pushed out to the street because the garage was full of his equipment. He said it was temporary. I said okay. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, Jace mentioned offhandedly that there were new people staying in the basement. Some guy's uncle knows, he said. They seem okay. I asked if they were guests or something more permanent. Jace didn't know. I meant to follow up. I didn't. The night I brought Jace home from that porch step, after he'd finally eaten something real, and we'd opened the sweet potato pie on our own kitchen table in Memphis. And it was genuinely good. He'd done everything right. I sat at my desk and pulled up the Dunbar Road account online. The mortgage was current. I paid it automatically. It was never a question, but there was something else in the account summary I hadn't seen before. A home equity line of credit. Opened 8 months earlier. A draw of $22,000 already taken. I had not opened a home equity line of credit on that property. I sat completely still for about a minute. Then I found the loan servicer's after-hours number and called. The HELOC had been opened with a physical signature form submitted in person. The name on the form was mine. I have a friend named Pryor who practices construction law out of Nashville. We went to Tennessee State together, graduated the same spring, and somehow managed to stay in contact through a decade of diverging careers. He's the kind of person who responds to texts quickly and doesn't exaggerate anything. I called him Thanksgiving morning while Jace was still asleep. I laid out all of it, the porch, the pie, the 6 cars in the driveway, the HELOC I didn't open, the landscaping equipment, the basement tenants. He was quiet on the other end for a few seconds. Then he said, "You need a real estate attorney today, not Monday, today." He gave me a name, Margot Hensley, downtown Nashville. He said she'd handled every version of this situation before and didn't believe in dragging things out. I met her that Friday in an office on the 3rd floor of a building near the courthouse. She was in her mid-40s, sharp and unhurried, with the kind of measured calm that comes from having already had every difficult conversation. I set the folder on her desk, deed, 6 years of mortgage statements, utility records, insurance documentation, all in my name. I also brought the HELOC paperwork I'd requested overnight from the servicer. She read through everything without interrupting. When she got to the HELOC page, she turned it around and pointed at the signature line. "Is that yours?" "No." She nodded once. "Then we have a forgery. That's not a family dispute, that's a felony." She set the page down. "The good news is the title is clear. You hold all of it. The mortgage, the deed, everything. The bad news is they're entrenched. They know the property. They have relationships in the community. And they're going to frame this as you attacking your own mother." She folded her hands. "How do you want to proceed?" I thought about Jace sitting on those steps, arms around a pie he'd made himself because he wanted to arrive as someone who contributed something. "I want to stop the bleeding," I said, "and I want everything done correctly." We spent 2 hours building the filing. When I left, I had a formal eviction notice, a civil complaint tied to the unauthorized tenancy and commercial use of the property, and a referral to a forensic document examiner to verify what I already knew about that signature. My brother called me the same afternoon the notices were served. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that started calm and ended with his voice climbing. He said I was overreacting. He said the HELOC was a misunderstanding. He'd planned to tell me. The money was already working its way back. I didn't need to make it into something criminal. He said his wife's entire family had come in from out of state for Thanksgiving, and the house was genuinely packed, and Jace could have knocked on the door like a normal person instead of sitting on the steps making everyone feel guilty. He said that last part like he believed it. My mother called an hour after that. Her voice had the particular texture it got when she was tired and wanted me to feel responsible for her tiredness. She said my brother was doing his best. She said things had been hard for him. She said the house on Dunbar Road felt like home, and she hoped I wasn't going to take something precious away over paperwork. I called her back. I'm not taking anything away, I said. Someone used my name to borrow $22,000 without my knowledge or consent. That's what I'm addressing. He made a mistake, she said. He forged my signature. That's not a mistake, that's a crime. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice had that old familiar sadness that had always been the most effective tool in her arsenal. You've always been so rigid, sweetheart. I don't know where you get it. I told her I'd talk to her soon, and I ended the call. That evening, my sister-in-law posted on Facebook. Pryor forwarded me the screenshot. She'd written that her husband's brother was going scorched earth on the family because of a misunderstanding over a holiday dinner, and that she was devastated for their mother, who doesn't deserve any of this. 60-something reactions in a few hours. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years left comments about family loyalty, about ingratitude, about what my father would have thought. One cousin wrote that some people forget where they came from the second they get a little success. Jace found it before I could do anything about it. He came into the kitchen holding his phone, his face very still. Are they going to make you look like the bad guy? He said. I thought about the right answer for a moment. I didn't want to give him false reassurance. Probably, I said. For a while, people believe the story they hear first. He looked at the phone, then he set it face down on the counter. I shouldn't have sat on the steps, he said. If I'd just left, none of this would be happening. That one landed differently than I expected, not because it stung, but because I recognized exactly the calculation he was making. The instinct to shrink, to disappear, to manage the discomfort of adults by making yourself smaller and quieter and less present. I'd made that same calculation for most of my childhood. I'd made it well into my 30s. Listen to me, I said. You sat on those steps because you were told to wait. You waited because you were being polite and you didn't want to cause problems. None of what happened after that is on you. Not one word of it. He didn't argue. He went to his room. He was that kind of kid. Absorbed what you said, processed it later, didn't need the last word. The hearing was held in Montgomery County on a cold Thursday morning in January. Margot set the full packet in front of the judge. 6 years of mortgage statements and utility invoices. The deed bearing only my name. The forensic examiner's report concluding with high certainty that the HELOC signature did not match my verified handwriting samples. Documentation of the commercial business registered to the residential property, and a lease agreement for the basement tenancy signed by a third party I had never met, with rent payments deposited to my brother's personal account. My brother's attorney made an argument about equitable interest, that years of living on the property and contributing to the household established some form of legitimate claim. The judge listened to the whole thing without expression. Then Margot stood up. Your Honor, my client has paid every cost associated with this property for 6 consecutive years. He is the sole legal title holder. The opposition has presented no countervailing deed, no co-ownership agreement, and no evidence of any financial contribution to the mortgage. She set the HELOC documents on the bench. Additionally, a forensic examination of the signature on this loan application concludes with high confidence that it does not match my client's handwriting. We are asking the court to refer that matter to the district attorney's office. The courtroom got very quiet. The judge picked up the HELOC signature page and looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at my brother. Would you like to address the signature, he said. My brother said it was a miscommunication. He said he'd intended to loop me in. He said family members shouldn't have to resolve things in a courtroom over paperwork and hurt feelings. The judge set the document down. The eviction order is valid, he said. Title is clear. The court will refer the signature matter to the district attorney's office for review. He looked at both tables. Motion granted. My brother stared at the table. His attorney wrote something on a yellow pad. I gathered my copies and followed Margot's into the hallway. Outside in the gray January air, she said, "That's about as clean as it gets." I nodded. I didn't feel victorious. I felt the way you feel after a long fever breaks, wrung out, clear-headed, and very aware of how much energy the whole thing had cost. My mother moved into a 2-bedroom apartment across town that February. I helped her pack one Saturday morning. We didn't say much, but we weren't cold with each other either. At some point, she found a framed photo behind a stack of boxes. Me at Jace's 3rd birthday party, grinning in a paper crown, my wife laughing beside me. She held it out without saying anything. "I hadn't seen that one in a while," I said. She set it carefully on top of a box meant for my truck. "Take it," she said softly. "It belongs with you." My brother and his wife relocated to a rental nearby. The landscaping business eventually found actual storage. The DA's office resolved the HELOC matter the following summer. My brother repaid the full amount with interest, agreed to terms I won't detail here, and through what I can only assume was excellent legal maneuvering, avoided a criminal conviction. I didn't ask for a particular outcome on that front. I just wanted the debt cleared and the record accurate. He called me about 8 months after the hearing. He didn't apologize directly. He said, "I should have asked you first," and then he waited, which is not the same as an apology, but it's closer to one than I'd expected, and I've learned to count what I can actually hold. I told him I heard him. I didn't tell him we were fine. We're not fine, not exactly, but we're something other than enemies, and that's where I'm leaving it for now. Jace turned 15 in March. He joined the robotics team at his school and started staying after class 3 evenings a week. His team made it to regionals in the spring, and I drove to Knoxville on a Saturday to watch them compete. He and his teammates spent 2 hours troubleshooting a mechanical arm that kept miscalibrating, hunched over the machine in that completely focused way he had, not thinking about anything outside that problem. I sat in the bleachers and watched him work and thought, this is who he is regardless of what the last year looked like. Jace is someone who shows up, keeps his hands on the problem, and doesn't need the credit. On the drive home, he was quiet most of the way down the interstate. Then, somewhere past Cookville, he said, "I've been thinking about the pie." "Yeah?" I said. I should have just eaten it on the porch, instead of holding onto it waiting for permission. I glanced over at him. He was watching the dark road ahead. "Why do you say that?" "Because I made it. It was good. I shouldn't have needed anyone to let me in before I could enjoy something I made myself." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "That's a smarter thought than most adults ever get to." He shrugged like it was obvious, but the corner of his mouth moved. The house on Dunbar Road sold in April to a couple from Nashville who'd been renting in the area for years. They sent me a message a few weeks after closing, which surprised me. Buyers don't usually reach out to sellers after the fact. They said the place felt right, and they were planning to put in a garden along the back fence line, where the afternoon light was good. I told them the soil there drained well, and the light held until nearly 7 in summer. They thanked me. It was a small exchange, but it felt like the right ending for that property. My mother wrote me a letter in July. 1 page, handwritten, the way she used to write when I was away at school. She didn't ask for anything. She said she'd thought about Thanksgiving more than she expected to. She said she should have come to the door. She knew that. She didn't say she was sorry exactly, but she said she knew, and that was its own kind of weight, the kind that costs something to put down on paper and send. I wrote back. I told her Jace had made regionals. I told her we were doing well. I said I hoped she was too. I haven't extended an invitation yet. I'm not in a hurry. I don't believe in performing forgiveness before it's real. I've seen what that looks like, and it always costs more than it buys. But the door isn't sealed. There's room for something eventually, if it's built correctly. We have a table in our apartment, round, 4 chairs, more than we need on a regular Tuesday. Jace picked it out when we moved in. He said he wanted extra chairs in case people came over. At the time, I figured he meant his friends from school. Now I think he meant something bigger, or maybe something he couldn't quite name yet, but understood in the way teenagers understand things they haven't learned the words for. The chairs are there. They'll be there when someone earns a place at them. And if that day is slow in coming, Jace and I will keep filling the table ourselves. With whatever he decides to cook next, with the work we're both still learning to do, with the particular kind of quiet that means you're safe and you know it. That's already more than enough. And it took me too long to see it clearly. The table was always ours. We just had to stop waiting for other people to tell us we were allowed to sit down.